Thank you, Congressman. Let's turn to another question from here in Iowa. It's on the subject of agriculture, close to a lot of Iowans' hearts, and it comes from Mr. Blaine Bankin.
I'm Blaine Bankin, a farmer from Messina, Iowa. I was wondering how you plan to help small farms as the large companies take over more farms.
Senator Dodd?
Well, George, listen, one of the areas we've got to have is a Justice Department that starts dealing with some of the antitrust issues in our country. It just doesn't cover agriculture, but also a variety of other things, including media concentration here. The ability today of just concentrating power, allowing so much to be accumulated, is making it very difficult for the kind of independents and smaller interests, including small business and small farmers, to be able to grow and to have the kind of economic success like to have. Rural America needs additional attention as well here. I'm a great believer that we need to extend the broadband access to our rural communities. Opportunity shouldn't require that you leave rural America to come to opportunity, but opportunity ought to be able to come to rural America by taking advantages of the technologies we have today so that people can stay on these farms and stay in rural parts of our country, including Iowa.
Senator Edwards, you have criticized U.S. trade agreements. How do you fashion trade agreements that protect American workers without in turn creating trade wars that hurt American farmers, Iowa farmers, and what they're trying to sell abroad?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I think we have failed trade policy in America. The question seems to have been on past trade agreements like NAFTA, is this trade agreement good for the profits of big multinational corporations? And the answer to those questions on the trade agreements we've entered into has been yes. It's been very good for multinational corporations. It has not been good for American workers. And as in an Edwards administration, the first question I will ask in every single trade agreement we're considering is this good for middle-class working families in America? That'll be the threshold question. And second, we will have real labor and environmental standards in the text of the agreement, which I will enforce. We will have protections against currency manipulation, which the Chinese are engaged in right now. And then finally, we will end these loopholes that actually create tax incentives for companies to leave America and take jobs somewhere else. That needs to be brought to an end.
Senator Clinton, how do you come down on that question of how do you protect American jobs in America without setting up a situation where other countries discriminate against the things we're trying to export, particularly agricultural exports?
Well, I agree with everything John said, with the additional point that your question really raised, and that is that we do export a lot of agricultural goods, many of that through trade agreements, and I think we've got to do three things. Number one, we have to have more focus on family farms, like the gentleman who asked the question. We have 34,000 family farms, largely in New York. I've tried to become a real advocate for them because they get lost in the shuffle. So I've created ways of working with them. I issued a report about how much difficulty they have getting their products across the border into Canada. So we've got to do more to make sure trade agreements are not only good for the exporting of agricultural products from great big agribusiness, but also from small farmers. Secondly, we've got to do more, as Chris said, to build up the agricultural and rural areas of our country. And thirdly, you know, trade needs to become a win-win. People ask me, am I a free trader or a fair trader? I want to be a smart, pro-American trader. And that means we look for ways to maximize the impact of what we're trying to export and quit being taken advantage of by other countries.
Senator Obama, how do you protect jobs without hurting farmers?
Well, I think that many of the recommendations that have been made are the right ones. There's one other thing, though, that we've got to talk about, and that is that our Congress subsidizes these big mega farms and hurts family farmers oftentimes in the process. And we've got to, I think, cap those subsidies so that we don't have continued concentration of agriculture in the hands of a few large agribusiness interests. But on the trade issue generally, we're not going to suddenly cordon off America from the world. Globalization is here, and I don't think Americans are afraid to compete. And if we have the goods and the services and the skills and the innovation to compete anywhere in the world. But what we've got to make absolutely certain of is that in that competition, we are hard bargainers. You know, I'm always struck by the Bush administration touting that this is the NBA president and they're such great businessmen, and they get taken to the cleaners in a lot of these trade agreements. And we've got to have somebody who's negotiating on behalf of workers and family farmers right here in Iowa.
Governor Richardson, we have
someplace else.
20 seconds left until commercial. Do you agree with Senator Obama's position that we should cap the subsidies to farms?
I want to find a way to make sure that the big agribusiness interests don't hurt the small farmer, the family farmer. What we also need to do is to promote conservation. We need to promote, besides subsidy reform, renewable fuels and technology. Our farm policy, if we have renewable fuels...
You get cut off by a commercial.
Enormous exports, trade, jobs.
We'll be right back.